So you said the younger guys. Are you talking about the High Supreme Fraction there? That's correct. And you were a member of that? That is correct. And when you say buck, what do you mean when you buck that instruction? That we really wasn't going to. At that time, we just didn't want to have no communications with the Black Gangster disciples because we was just having a heavy feud. So now somebody come out of jail and tell us that we got to get along, We didn't really want that at the time. Did you and the other younger guys manage to stay separate, or did you, in fact, end up unifying with the others? Well, at the time, we kind of like I said, we didn't make it known that we was bucking or whatever you want to call it. Everybody knew. Objection to everybody knew, Your Honor. That would be speculative. Overruled. Everyone in the neighborhood knew that, besides Gregory Shell, that we was pretty much bucking at the time. So we kind of say to ourselves, you know what I'm saying? Like I say, everybody knew. Everybody knew. Everybody knew that the younger guys didn't want to comply to what you call us being as one, being together. And did that ever result in a conflict between the younger guys and the older guys? Yes, it did. Tell us about that. We was at this playground, and the older guys was playing basketball, and the younger guys, along with myself, was playing softball. And I happened to hit the softball on the basketball court. And the guy named Dark that was a BOS for, he was reaching for the neighborhood at that time. And the ball landed on the basketball court, and he took the softball and threw the softball outside of the park. So at that time, I called him by his name. We start fighting. A physical fist fight? Correct. We had a fight. So at that time, I had got pretty much the best of him. And all of the older guys was joking with him and joking. You let the little guy beat you up. So after they broke everything up, they were saying that he was going to get a gun. He was going to shoot me and whatever. So we went and got a gun and, just hanging around. You know what I'm saying? But nothing ever stemmed from it. Then one day we was at this Arab store playing video games, and all of a sudden we turned around and Shorty G and Dark and everybody came inside of the restaurant. Well, there was food. The grocery store / restaurant. Came inside the restaurant and kind of surrounded us, and Shorty G, the governor, and Dark, the regent. Yes, sir. Dark, who you just beat in the fight? Yes, sir. And what did they do when they surrounded you? He asked me, was I the one that had to fight with Dark? And I told him, yeah, I was. And he asked me, did I have a gun on me? And I told him no. So he pulled out a gun, 357. He gave it to me and told me to come on and ride with him in the car. Shorty G did? Correct. So after we got in the car, we started driving around. He asked me what happened, and I told him what had happened. And he explained to me that Mr. Hoover was a High Supreme Gangster disciple, and Mr. Hoover wishes that he wanted everybody to combine as one. Things like that. After he kind of explained it to me, I guess you can say that I knew who Gregory Shell was, but I never spoke to him. So me being a young guy, and I finally got a chance to talk to him. And after I talked to him in the car, he explained things to me a little more better. I had to understand it a little better. So I was willing to comply. And when we came back to the stove, he told everybody to gather around and told everybody that I was the new regent now in the neighborhood, and everybody had to follow me. So after meeting with Shorty G, your status changed, it sounds like. That's the only status I had. I never had no status as a youngin'. As a youngin', I guess you could say I was a bully of the young generation. They looked at me as a head, but I didn't have any status or nothing like that. But when he came in, that's the first time he gave me, I guess you would say, official status. And that included a title? Yes. And tell us that title again. Regent. Objection. Asked and answered. Overruled. What about a nickname, Mr. McCain? Did you have a nickname at that time? At that time, not at that time, but maybe a few weeks after that, they started calling me Muammar Gaddafi. Why did they call you that? Well, they said that. Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. Overruled. They said that I was a little terrorist, a little tyrant, And they started calling me Muammar Gaddafi. Then they got cut down to just Gaddafi. At the time when Shorty G made you a regent, how old were you? Do you remember? Maybe about 16, 17, somewhere up in there. Now, even though you were 16 or 17, did you have authority over guys who were older than you? Yes, and I didn't have a clue of what to do. Was your age any kind of barrier to you taking on that title? No, I don't think it really had anything to do with the age. It's just that I didn't know anything about structure, how things really went in the organization at that time. You know, we was just young and just doing anything at that time. So we always heard about, gangster disciples this, gangster disciples that. And we followed what the older guys did. But as far as structure-wise, I didn't have a clue. I didn't have a clue of, you just gave me this position. And you're telling me that I'm in charge of these guys. And I don't have a clue of what to do. You know what I'm saying? So, tell us a little about what you did as a regent after you got that title. Objection, Your Honor. Relevant. Overruled. Well, I went to him and told him that I didn't know what to do as a regent. Went to who? Gregory Shell, Shorty G. He just told me to just watch and pay attention and do what he do. So at that time, he kind of made me like his personal security. So we would ride around the east side of Chicago, and he would go to different neighborhoods and tell me, this is this region, this is that region, this is who runs that neighborhood, that's who runs the neighborhood. And he would introduce them to me and tell them that I ran Lawn City. And pretty much whatever I seen, however he conducted himself among them, I got back in the neighborhood and kind of mimicked what he did with those guys. And in terms of the actual business or activities of the gang, was drugs part of what the gangster disciples were doing? Yeah, when the structure came out. Drugs. Even when I was little, we were selling drugs. But the structure, when he brought the structure to the organization, he took me anyway, to a whole nother level of showing me this is what it's about. This is how we can grow. He was always giving speeches or whatever. We were together all the time. We would always ride and talk to me a lot about the organization and stuff like that. And at this time, we was, like I say, we started bringing structure down. And the drugs had got a little more serious, make things a little more serious, because he explained to me objection, Your Honor, hearsay, overruled. He explained to me what direction that Mr. Hoover wanted the organization to go through and what we can accomplish if we all work together. Things like that. Let me ask you in a little more detail about the structure and the drugs. So first, what types of drugs were gangster disciples selling at that time? Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. Overruled. We started off selling powdered cocaine. And then when crack cocaine hit the surface, we seen that you make more money faster with the crack cocaine. So we started selling crack cocaine. And selling the drugs, was that something that the various members of the gang would go off and do on their own? Or was it organized as part of the gang? Well, before the structure was, whoever you got it from, you got it from. Wherever you got the drugs from? Wherever you got the drugs from, that was fine. But when the structure came and it got organized, you had to buy your drugs from the organization. If the organization didn't have it at that time, then you was able to go and buy it from anybody you wanted to. But when the organization had it, you had to buy it from the organization. And what about the money that members earned from selling the drugs? Was that connected with the structure at all? What you mean? I'm not getting what you're saying. Well, when people would go and sell a bag of crack cocaine, they would get some money, right? Correct. Would they just keep that money in their pocket? Or would the money be shared or spread in some way among other members of the organization? Well, if you gave a person an ounce of cocaine, you would tell him, okay, you want $1,000 back. And he was responsible for bringing that $1,000 back. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like you were selling to individuals in the organization. You had times where you had, say, for instance, somebody went to jail and his bond was 40 or 50,000. Then you would get everybody together and tell everybody that this is nation work. We're going to put this out. We're trying to get such and such out. His bond is 50,000. Everybody got shut down in the neighborhood. Can't nobody do anything until we sell these drugs and get the 50,000. Then once we get the 50,000, we'll open up the neighborhood back up. And help us understand, for instance, what you as a regent, what would the drug business look like to you personally? Were you out there on the street handing bags to customers, or did you play a different role? Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. Overruled. I was passing out the drugs. I wasn't on the street selling them. I was passing them out to the sellers. And so these sellers would be people working under you? Correct. Organization? Correct. How many sellers would you typically have working for you? Well, at that time, I was everybody that was in the neighborhood was selling drugs. Can you estimate a number? I mean, you might have a count at that time of 70. You might have about 65 selling drugs, something like that. And so if you had 65 or 70 people under you, were there also people over you? Well, Gregory Shell was over me. Shorty G was over me. But the money got funneled up. You know, once I turned everything into him, then we would go turn everything over to, at that time, a lady named Bertha Moses. Slim was one of Larry Hoover's girlfriends. So we would go and turn the money over to her. And did you have an understanding as part of the gang where that money ultimately ended up? Objection. Leading. Overruled. Well, everybody knew that if it was organization drugs, everybody knew it was Mr. Hoover's drugs. Anybody in the neighborhood know that. If you're telling the neighborhood that they got to buy drugs from the organization, and only the organization, unless the organization don't have any, everybody know that. Everybody knew that Mr. Hoover. Objection to the phrase, everybody knew. Overruled. Everyone knew that Mr. Hoover was the chairman, or the king, or whatever, the boss, whatever. Several names that he had. Everyone knew that it was his drugs.